Venezuela was once considered among the richest nations on the planet, but is now struggling like many oil-rich countries with many problems. Widespread hunger, extreme poverty, scarcity of basic necessities, high crime rates, and the dubious distinction of having the world's highest inflation rate. Today, it is facing one of the worst economic crises in modern history. Venezuela, which has the world's largest oil reserves, is a cautionary tale highlighting the dangers of becoming a petrostate. Oil has taken Venezuela on an exhilarating but dangerous boom and bust ride since its discovery in the 1920s, providing lessons for other resource-rich states. Decades of poor governance have led to the economic and political ruin of what was once one of Latin America's most prosperous countries. Venezuela's economy has collapsed in recent years, with output falling by 3/4 and rampant hyperinflation causing a scarcity of basic goods. Meanwhile, government mismanagement and US sanctions have sharply dropped oil production and significant underinvestment in the sector. Conversely, Caracas hopes that Washington's decision to allow US oil giant Chevron to resume operations in Venezuela in 2022 will signal a possible détente. Let's take a quick look at the country's discovery of oil, the events which led it to become a petrostate. The Royal Dutch shell geologists at La Rosa, a field in the Maracaibo Basin, struck oil in 1922, which blew out an extraordinary rate of 100,000 barrels daily. This led to Venezuela becoming second to the United States in total output by 1929. By the 1930s, only 3 foreign companies controlled 98% of the Venezuelan oil market, and Gomez's successors sought to reform the oil sector to funnel funds into government coffers. The Hydrocarbons Law of 1943 was the first step in that direction, requiring foreign companies to give the state half of their oil profits. In 1958, Venezuela elected its first stable democratic government. It signed the Punto Fijo Pact, which guaranteed that state jobs and, notably, oil rents would be parceled out to the 3 parties in proportion to voting results. Venezuela joined Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia as a founding member of OPEC in 1960, establishing its first state oil company, the Venezuelan Petroleum Corporation, and increased oil companies' income tax to 65% of profits. Venezuela is a country with the highest per capita income in Latin America, made up of over $100 billion between 1972 and 1997. In 1976, President Carlos André Pérez nationalized the oil industry and created Petróleos de Venezuela S.A. to oversee oil exploration, production, refining, and exporting. The 1980s oil glut caused a contraction in the economy, soaring inflation and massive foreign debt, leading to riots and a failed coup in 1992. In 1993, Venezuela purchased foreign refineries, such as Citgo in the United States, as part of a financial bailout from the International Monetary Fund. To understand Venezuela's recent economic collapse, we must go forward to the early 2000s when Hugo Chavez was elected president. Chavez came to power with a vision of transforming Venezuela into a socialist paradise, and he set out to nationalize key industries such as oil, electricity, and telecommunications. He promised to use the profits from these industries to fund social programs and to reduce poverty. Initially, his policies seemed to work, and the economy grew under his leadership. But the foundation of Chavez's plan was what would bring the entire economy tumbling down in just a rather short time in history. Chavez's economic policies were based on high oil prices. Venezuela's oil reserves provided the bulk of the country's revenue, and Chavez believed that the profits from oil could fund his social programs forever. But could the oil boom for the country do as the president dreamed? That will be explored as the video goes on. At first, these policies seemed to be working. Poverty rates dropped, and access to healthcare and education increased. Nationalized industries became inefficient as government control stifled innovation and competition. Price controls led to shortages of basic goods, as producers could no longer make a profit and stopped producing. But this approach had several flaws. It left the country vulnerable and naked to the flames of fluctuations in oil prices, which was, of course, the foundation of the master plan. That meant anything that happened to the prices of oil, the economy would either benefit or suffer from it. But as anyone in oil would know, oil prices are cyclical, and high prices can't go on forever. The government also began printing money to finance its spending, leading to hyperinflation. When oil prices fell in 2014, Venezuela was hit hard, and the government struggled to provide its citizens with basic goods like food and medicine. In 2016, the inflation rate reached a staggering 800%, making basic goods unaffordable for most Venezuelans. As the economy deteriorated, the government responded to double down on its failed policies, further deepening the crisis. Chavez's policies discouraged foreign investment and led to capital flight. Many businesses and wealthy individuals left the country, taking their money with them. This further weakened the economy and made it difficult for the government to generate revenue. With all these going on, Chavez continued to implement his socialist policies, including price controls and strict business regulations. He also launched a campaign to redistribute wealth and reduce inequality. While these policies initially helped to reduce poverty, they eventually led to economic stagnation because there wasn't enough money to go around, with all the rich folks fleeing for their lives to favorable economies like the US and UK. Chavez's nationalization policies were particularly damaging to the economy. The government took control of major industries, including oil production, which led to inefficiencies and corruption. The oil industry was particularly hard hit, as the government diverted profits to social programs instead of reinvesting in the industry. As a result, oil production declined, and the country became increasingly dependent on imports to meet its energy needs. And that is how Venezuela became another oil-rich country, turned economic failure, depending on other countries. What made matters worse was the culture of borrowing which clouded his government. They borrowed as if they would never pay it back. This was all based on the idea that oil would keep paying them, so they didn't have to worry about how they would pay back the debts. What mattered was that they reached economic paradise before oil prices came rocking the bottom. When Chavez passed away in 2013, he was succeeded by Nicolas Maduro, who continued to implement many of Chavez's policies. Maduro faced a much more challenging economic environment than Chavez, as oil prices had fallen significantly, and the economy was already in decline. Rather than address these challenges, Maduro doubled down on Chavez's policies, making matters even worse. According to the International Monetary Fund, Maduro's policies have led to hyperinflation, which reached over 10 million% in 2019. The government has been unable to provide basic goods like food and medicine to its citizens, and many people are leaving the country in search of a better life. To make matters worse, Maduro's government has been accused of corruption, human rights abuses, and election fraud. This has led to international sanctions and further isolation of the country. The country's economy has also been hurt by the collapse of its manufacturing sector. Many businesses that were nationalized under Chavez failed to meet production targets, and many foreign businesses were forced to leave the country due to unfavorable policies. As a result, Venezuela has become heavily reliant on imports, and the cost of basic goods has skyrocketed. The government's response to the crisis has been to print more money, which has only fueled inflation further. The government has also imposed price controls on basic goods, which has led to shortages and long lines of stores. The shortages have been particularly severe for food and medicine, and many people are forced to rely on the black market to obtain these goods. It was a cycle. The government had simply been repeating the same mistakes of the previous leadership. As they say, it's all in history. Now, don't quote that anywhere, since that's a made-up quote. But hey, Maduro's government could have certainly learned from its recent history. But that didn't happen, only leading the country into further distraction. Venezuela is the leading oil reserve and has enjoyed its share of oil richness. Although those riches aren't going anywhere visible in their current capacity, they had the potential to make one of the best economic breakthroughs in the world. Chavez's economic policies simply came with an Achilles heel. As a result of the economic collapse, the people of Venezuela have suffered tremendously. Food and medicine shortages are widespread, and many people are forced to eat garbage or go hungry. Infant mortality rates have skyrocketed, and there are reports of newborn babies dying in hospitals due to a lack of basic medical supplies. Crime rates have also surged, and Venezuela has become one of the most dangerous countries in the world. Despite the severity of the crisis, there is hope for the Venezuelan economy. The IMF and World Bank have both offered assistance to the government in implementing reforms to stabilize the economy. These reforms include reducing government spending, liberalizing the economy, and reducing government control over industry. However, implementing these reforms will not be easy, and the government will need to make difficult choices in the short term to ensure long-term economic stability. The economic collapse of Venezuela is a cautionary tale of the dangers of government control of the economy. While the intentions behind Chavez's policies may have been noble, the end result was catastrophic for the Venezuelan people. The lesson to be learned is that free market policies, which encourage innovation and competition, are essential for a healthy economy. While the road to recovery may be long and difficult, it is not impossible, and with the right policies, Venezuela can once again become a prosperous nation. With all that said, I'm hoping you've learned something today, and if you did enjoy this video, it would mean a lot if you could leave a like, and if you fancy sticking around for more videos about economics and finance, then make sure to click that subscribe button. Thanks for watching.